We wanted to do a very brief overview of who Telit is and what we do, maybe 5 minutes. So who is Telit? Telit is a publicly traded company, London Stock Exchange. We have in excess of $300 billion of assets under our supervision, the majority in the semiconductor space. We have about 11 R&D centers throughout the world: Tel Aviv, Rome, South Korea, San Jose. We have about 7,000 customers that create connected devices like Nest, like things that are connected in vehicle stuff, telematics. We have 20 plus years of experience on IoT and IIoT. We have about 1,000 employees worldwide. So the Telit deviceWISE advantage. Telit deviceWISE is a software load that you could leverage within the four walls, connecting assets from the floor. We call this the OT into the IT space on premise. Customers like like automotive customers like the Hondas, the Fords, the BMWs, common customers, leverage deviceWISE to bridge the OT IT gap. Because of the Industry 4.0 and the servitization of the industry, we have also the capability to communicate and exchange information with external cloud systems like Mindsphere, for example, where suppliers could look at consumables within the factory, customers could see the status of their equipment out in the field, and clearly we could then, on a preventive maintenance mode or supplier chain, we could have field service take care of things. So deviceWISE enable not just on-prem, but the whole Industry 4.0 ecosystem, on-prem and outside. So in a nutshell, so deviceWISE integrates the shop floor with IT systems that are on-prem, like all relational databases, for example, for scheduling, for quality, bigger business systems like SAP, SAP HANA, MII, SAP PM, and so on, and messaging systems like JMS, MSMQ, IBM MQ, and of course Siemens Mindsphere. On the southbound, we support basically just about everything on the OT world, all the Siemens line, Mitsubishi line, Rockwell line, Atlas, Fanuc, and so on. So basically, we integrate the two worlds easily without custom code. So that's kind of our sweet spot. So let me go to the next slide. So our deviceWISE platform clearly has the OT connectivity, and that's one of the reasons we're partnering with Mindsphere to communicate with non-Siemens gear down on the OT space. deviceWISE also provides a business logic. You could look at it kind of like business logic, where you could do if, then, else. You could do data transformation, and of course, in the top tier, you have the enterprise layer, which is on-prem or on cloud. It could be from Microsoft, MSMQ, SAP, and Mindsphere as an example. deviceWISE is a software load. You load it on a compute unit. It could be a x86 blade. It could be a Siemens IPC, an IoT 2040, nanos, micros, even big mainframes like big IBM P-Series systems. And so this slide depicts the whole connectivity ecosystem here. So in this example, we have deviceWISE running on an IoT 2040. It has connectivity to all those non-Siemens equipment, PLCs, DCSs, robots, and so on. The business logic is also running here, and the key to the business logic is clearly to minimize the bandwidth communicating to Mindsphere, for example. You could do data reduction on the edge. You could do data filtering, outliers, data collection, statistical analysis, and then you deliver data into Mindsphere. The business logic, you see that, and you'll see that in a moment, runs also on the IoT 2040. Telit provides on the cellular side of the communications. We sell connectivity, and we have a device management cloud where you could access tens of thousands of these devices out in the field. You could manage their firmware, you could manage their business logic, you could manage the provisioning. And the same deviceWISE running on the IoT 2040, for example, delivers the data into a Mindsphere where the apps are there to do business valuable stuff. And this is just one quick example, the IoT 2040 embedded with our Telit LTE radio. I don't know this particular model, but we have a model that we call it the single SKU that switches between Verizon and AT&T on the same silicon. So you could enable now a moving, non-connected to the network asset on the edge that communicates with Mindsphere, for example.
Now, let's see deviceWISE for Factory in action. Watch as we connect a few common factory floor devices, no custom code needed, to the deviceWISE workbench, and then Mindsphere. David will connect a system monitor for the laptop we are running deviceWISE on, a Siemens S7-300, a Rockwell ControlLogix CPU, a FANUC CNC, an environmental sensor, an Omron NJ CPU, a Mitsubishi Electric Q CPU, and the Rockwell Micro 800, all of which make up a very small portion of the hundreds of devices that deviceWISE supports. From there, watch as business logic is easily implemented with the deviceWISE drag-and-drop user interface. David sets conditions for triggers in a matter of seconds and with no custom code required. These triggers push data from the factory floor into Mindsphere itself.
We're going to show you how we define OT devices, how we communicate with Mindsphere, how we deliver the data. So the first step is to show you briefly here and I don't have all the drivers here installed, but a good amount. So deviceWISE supports natively a variety of devices. This happens to be an Atlas Copco, is a node runner or DC tool. This is used on the manufacturing space, discrete manufacturing quite often. Beckhoff, you probably know Beckhoff very well. EMO8 is an environmental sensor. It's a small device that humidity, illumination, temperature. FANUC CNCs, GE FANUC, the older PLCs and FANUC robots. We could do MQTT communication to some sensors. We support the entire Mitsubishi line, Modbus, of course. We have a DA client. We also have a UA client, but it's not installed at the moment. We support the Omron, all the Omron PLCs. Up to 22 has some I/O that we support. This is a older Rockwell line, for example, SIG, SNMP, and the Siemens line. So it's a pretty robust set of connectors. So we're now going to go through the exercise of establishing connectivity with those PLCs, and you'll see how simple this is. So I'm going to call this MS. I'm going to create the first device. It's going to be a Siemens S7-300 device, and we'll pick it over here. You supply the IP address. Throughout the product, you could check that you are doing whatever you are defining is correct. It's like a health check. So we have defined this, but we have no tags, so to speak. So now we start this device, and then what deviceWISE does is goes to the network and basically enumerate the entire data model address space of the PLC. So those are all the data blocks, and you could read and you could write and so on. Of course, I am connected in this engineering software as a super user. There's a role-based security that we could turn on, and then we control who does what where. So that's a Rockwell device. Now we're going to proceed with a Rockwell device. It happens to be a ControlLogix, and we pick it from the list. supply the IP address. Again, throughout the product, you check, then you save the definition, and just to review, if you notice here, we don't have tags yet. So in the Rockwell side, we do the same thing. We'll start the device, and then we go reach down to the controller and enumerate all their address space. So you have access now to all the tags in the PLC. Controller tags, program tags, you could see everything. We support UDTs, the entire data model, and types. So now I'm going to define one more device, actually a handful more. MS, we're going to call this FANUC 0i, and you guessed it, it's a FANUC CNC. And we're going to pick the 1E, E1, right?
Mm-hmm. You missed it. You got the 160.
So we pick the right type, and we supply the IP address. That's an interesting termination, 9.99. Sounds like gasoline price. So validate it. Okay, good. Save it. And then we start it, and then we reach out over the network, and we enumerate basically spindle information, current program information, access. So everything that the CNC can let you see, everything that is needed for business, we enumerate. So it's available to do business logic here. I'm going to add a couple more. Now this is getting kind of boring. We're going to add the e-sensor. It's the environmental sensor.
So David, these are all devices that are in your lab, or right?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
it is on
So
my
there are
actually
real
lab.
running,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're running. They're controls that are running right now.
Right now, yes. This is all live. Nothing is simulated here. So save it, and then we start, and let's take a look at that one because that will tell your temperature here. (28.3 centigrade). It's not bad. Then we add a couple more, and then we will be done. So now we're going to add an on-run PLC. This is a tag-based on-run PLC. Pick the type. Again, validate. Yes, I can access it, save it, start. And then again, same thing. We enumerate the entire address space of that controller. And one more, and we're done. This one is our friends in Japan.
The micro 800.
Melco Q. It's a QCPU. 136. Again, validate. Oh, I must have misspelled something.
Got 2. Got the 136.
Oh, no wonder. So I'm gonna be cocky and start it. Boom. Yep, starts, and again, same thing. So one more and we're done, I promise. So we're gonna do a very small Rockwell one called MS. We're gonna call MS for Mindsphere, Micro 800. Put the IP address, validate, check, save, start. And now we have basically all those devices, and you could expand the tag tree. So now you have OT information that could be used for any kind of business, preventive maintenance, quality, supplies, logistics. The data is now available. So our next step is, well, we have this data here. How do we get it into Mindsphere? And then my next step here will be to onboard this gateway running here into Mindsphere. So the first step,
Mindsphere.
The first step is to we need to provide the authentication token. Then we switch to Mindsphere, and then go to the asset manager here.
Just hit sign. Enter. That's good.
Same? No, my credentials are different.
Yeah, but that's the server's credentials. I don't think it matters.
I don't try. I don't want credentials.
David,
Yeah, minimum.
did you tell us what gateway device you're using to go to Mindsphere?
Right now, this is an IBM P70, but you could use any of the Siemens industrial computer lines, all the way from the blades down to the IoT 2040. It runs in all of those. But it basically runs on Linux, on Windows, on AIX. And very hopefully before the end of the year, it will run inside one of our LTE radio modules. So you have the ability from a connected device, which could be something in oil and gas, like a pump, and then it's right on the silicon Mindsphere.
Okay, so that's on board the P70.
So P70 is the laptop with that I tried originally. So what we're going to do is onboard this gateway, the P70, into Mindsphere.
Okay.
So the first thing we do is clearly we get our key information. So we grab this entire document. It's basically a JSON document, and we'll drop it here. There you
Oh, this isn't my control. My control is the FM key.
We have a little, there you go. Okay, so we get the whole JSON from Mindsphere, the asset manager, and then we already onboarded. So if you were to refresh this page here, you should be onboarded. Well, device-wise knows it's onboarded. It takes a little time on the internet side. Hello. So it says we are onboarded. So that's the very foundational step here, is to get us onboarded into Mindsphere. Any questions so far?
That was fast.
So
Very fast.
yeah, thanks. So here, something I forgot real quickly. You notice that device-wise supports quite a bit of connectivity for the OT space. We also support on-prem connectivity to the IT space. So this is very quick. I spent 20 seconds. Basically, all relational databases, JMS, which is NetWeaver JMS, WebSphere JMS, MSMQ, Semantic IT MES could play here. Actually, there's customers that use it. SAP, of course, IBM Watson, IBM MQ, Web Services. So anything that is IT on-prem, we could also exchange data. But let's focus a little bit on how to deliver data into Mindsphere. So the business logic that we discussed earlier, we created this project called Mindsphere. And what we're going to do is we're going to create something that's called a trigger. And a trigger is the unit of work in device-wise that has the business logic, and it's expressed in the form of a flowchart, like sequential flowchart kind of language or expression. So this is what we call a trigger. A trigger has a couple of parts. It has an event. Of course, we have to give it a name. It has an event. One event could be, hey, I want this thing to run every second. Or I want this to run because a CNC machine sent me a condition, lubrication bad, for example, hardware failure. So that would be the event. The CNC machine running MT Connect will deliver that signal to us, and then you could do some business logic to do something, preventive maintenance or so on. In the case of if you want this trigger to run because some data point on a PLC changes, for example, so if this bit changes, then this business logic will run. So it's very flexible. You could also say you could set it to run on a schedule every month except December, for example. So you could do a trigger that runs Monday morning and a trigger that runs Friday, and then you could generate totals, for example, for the production of the week. Of course, you could do the shift processing here as well. One of the more powerful features of these events is PLC logic events. So if there are devices like a Siemens PLC that delivers like an AG sent from the CPU, we will parse the data. So in this case, the PLC is in control. We don't have to poll anymore. Let the PLC tell us. So we support all the events from devices that provide it. You know, Beckhoff has a transmission, Mitsubishi another one. Siemens actually have quite a few. It has a vSend, AG-send, and TCP transmission as well. We support those too. So it's very rich as to what the event is. For this demo, we're going to, what we're going to do here is do some time series data into Mindsphere. So we're going to pick up the sensor data and put it on Mindsphere. So what I'm going to do next is do the business logic. So the business logic is like this. On the left, you have a group of functions. Some of these could be to send an email, for example, on-prem. But in the case of Mindsphere, of course, we're going to do time series. So you drop this here. And then if you notice, we went up to Mindsphere and look up at all the data sources that are available, so you don't have to type it. So now this becomes an exercise of mapping data. So this is the e-sensors data source in Mindsphere. So you say, well, temperature, humidity, illumination, and the current timestamp. And you terminate this. And on error, you could, in theory, send an email to somebody. For example, something like this. You connect. And then you're done. Something like that, right? So that's a little bit of business logic. Every second, deliver environmental sensor information to Mindsphere. But we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to call this trigger, well, how do we call it? E-sensor. Just a simple name, and then we validate this, we save it, and we start it. And now if you notice here, he is going to begin to run. Hopefully all goes well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now we have 5 successes. I don't know if people see with that resolution. So we have delivered into Mindsphere environmental data in basically, I don't know, 20 keystrokes. So now we could take a look in Mindsphere, although Mindsphere takes a little time to catch up. But maybe we'll do a little bit more, and then we'll go to the Fleet Manager and look at the data. Mm-hmm. So the next trigger we're going to do is just we're going to pick some CNC information and deliver it to Mindsphere. So we're going to call this CNC, whatever, CNC time series. By the way,
one question. Yeah. This business logic is an on-premise solution from Telit, or is this also available or to be available in an app on Mindsphere?
It's a great question. It's a great question. So why don't we kind of wait for the end, because there's some discussions about where do we position things. In this case, it's running on the edge. So we're collecting the data, we're doing data reduction, filtering, statistical, something. Then we send it to Mindsphere, for example. So it is running on the edge. So if you have a 2040 controlling a pump connected cellular, he's doing some compute on the data right there, and then informing Mindsphere of significant business events like an alarm. Hey, something is trending the wrong way, or whatever. Maybe sending the raw data for analytics by an app on Mindsphere. So it depends. But in this case, it's running right here in the gateway in deviceWISE.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So the next thing, we're going to deliver some CNC information, and it's going to be very similar to what we did before. Basically, we're going to do a time series data, and then we're going to terminate this. And now,
because your mouse is sensitive.
So how do you open this with your mouse?
If you use this, it'll be easier.
Okay. So now, instead of using the sensors, I'm gonna pick a different data source. This is FANUC CNC, which already created up in Mindsphere. So what we're going to do now is we're going to map the data points that are inside the data source in Mindsphere, which are right here, which we also interrogated from Mindsphere. Notice you don't need to type anything. So now we're going to go to the FANUC controller, and we're gonna feed the feed rate. Wow, that sounds interesting. Feed the feed rate. And then we're going to do axis X. Absolute. And I think there is a CNC program running at the time.
We did it backwards. That's feed rate, actually.
Oh, sorry. So axis absolute, Z absolute.
One below.
Feed rate. Let's feed the feed rate. And of course, we have to provide a timestamp. If we don't provide it here, we'll internally assign the timestamp of this, but we could also use timestamp from the actual sensor if it is provided. So event time, close it, save it, and no surprise, we're gonna fire it, and now it gets boring from this point on how we send data into Mindsphere. So we're gonna do one more, and then we'll kind of stop, and then maybe take some questions. You want to do the Rockwell then? Or? So we're going to do one more. We have a small trainer set from Rockwell that has all kinds of I/O, discrete ins, analog ins. So we're going to basically map that info. Now I can see it over there. Mm-hmm. So if you notice, this is only, it becomes a mapping exercise. If you have data that is vectorized, we will show you later how you could send large arrays of data in one request. There are some tools that provide trace information, like the DC tools. You have the whole torque curve, maybe 50, 70 milliseconds apart, the torque, the angle, and sometimes the current. So with that, it's a lot of data. It's maybe, I don't know, 3,000 points, floating points with the timestamp in it. So what we do is we created and I will show you in a moment how you could send this vectorized data. So this data is kind of is ripe and ready for analytics, because you'll be able to detect trends of behaviors. If the current increases, clearly there may be a problem with the mechanical part. So, and then, somebody will develop this data model and then see that the data is going to lead to the data is providing him an insight that is something's going to be bad. So anyhow, so that's a very quick how you onboard some kind of sensor into Mindsphere. There's no programming needed here whatsoever. It's really simple. Very little typing, just the names of the things in deviceWISE. Everything is discoverable, not only from deviceWISE, but also from Mindsphere. And our hope is to discover even more. We might be able to, even at some point, automatically define the data sources, the data points, maybe a little bit more the aspects, maybe even a digital twin. I'm not sure, but those we're open to that. The key to this is the user experience. It has to be simple. It can be a science project. So anyhow, so that's kind of what we have as far as the demo. So Ed, Cynthia, at this point, I guess we could probably show you some data in Mindsphere on the Fleet Manager, and then we could turn it over for questions. Did we lose it?
No, we shouldn't.
Oh, Cynthia?
Over here.
Okay, everybody's there. Okay, that's good.
You're going to show us in Fleet Manager. That sounds perfect,
Yes.
what you're going to do.
Yes, there you go.
Because I see it, but I guess we're looking at the EM08. You're going to switch it to the P70.
Yep. So that is the environmental sensor, and then we're going to look at FANUC information, so you could see some of the data. So let's look at
Oh, I don't have the Fanic running right now.
Oh, it's not cutting.
We could look at.
Oh, here. So we could change something. We can hold that. That's okay.
It's actually 14, right?
Yeah.
Let me zoom in a little bit more.
So anyhow, you see some data. So the net is that is really simple to onboard information from field devices.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
I think our data sources got. So I think the reason you're only seeing emo 8 right now is because we don't have the other data sources mapped right now. They must have gotten unmapped when we added something to Mindsphere.
But they see data from.
But yes, you can definitely see it here from the temperature sensor.
Yeah.
And if we zoom in, we can get more accuracy because we are sending on a second level. So here you see a lot more.
It's slow because this doesn't transfer on the internet quick.
So everything's pretty steady because this is just temperature sensor.
So any questions, Ed, Cynthia? How do you wanna?
Yeah, just to clarify one step that I don't know if it was skipped from the demo or if it's to get it to show up in Fleet Manager. Did you have to do some work, or did you really just show us everything that's involved?
Prior to the demonstration, we had pre-created the digital twins.
Okay, awesome.
those
Yeah,
things.
I wondered. I said, how did it magically appear that way? Okay.
Right. So
Yeah, a little
right.
configuration.
Exactly. Now that's what I was mentioning, that we just got to understand what really makes sense from a Mindsphere operator point of view. How much do we create from the edge? We can. It's just that we want to do what makes sense. We definitely have the means to do it. It's just that we need to see what makes sense to do it. But for now, we are enumerating automatically from Mindsphere, so people don't have to look at one screen, cut and paste and put, and none of that. Questions?
Yeah, team, do you we'll go with questions, or also Ed, were we going to discuss a go-to-market, or how did we want to handle that? We've got about getting close to 15 minutes left.
Yeah, open the floor to questions for right now.
Okay, great.
Before talk about how we go to market with Telit.
Going back to that device you showed in the very beginning with the antennas, do you actually have that running someplace? And is it something we could talk about?
Yes. Austin, go to this IP address. The IP address is 172.27.8.198. 172.27.8.198.
Okay.
So that is device-wise running on an IoT 2040. So I have not plugged in our Mindsphere plugin. Okay, just to give you a quick idea, everything in device-wise, it's kind of like a plugin. So they're delivered in the form of packages. So my system has quite a few packages installed. For example, it has the Beckhoff driver installed, the package. It has the Mindsphere extension installed. It has the Atlas Copco installed. So the Siemens 2040 doesn't have as many things because, I don't use it like a whole bunch. But one thing that it has our cell modem manager. So if you notice over here, you have information. Let me make sure we connected the antenna. This is the APN. This happens, I think this is an AT&T network a device inside, and that takes a little while to connect it. So now this 2040, which is what was on the slide here, I'm going to scroll real quickly here, similar to this one. That's our Telit module. with Telit connectivity, the two antennas, and this is an IoT 2040 with local I/O, for example. So it's now connected onto the internet. It happens to have an AT&T SIM, and this is all the cellular. This is an LTE radio. So anyhow, so this is how it connects to the network, but it has the same. It has the same devices. You could define the same devices. You could define projects, and then you could do Mindsphere I/O from here. There is no difference. Well, there is a big difference, of course. This between a quad-core big computer and one that is not so big, but this is a inexpensive, powerful. This is a nice edge compute. Now I'm going to show you another device that we have on this network that was co-developed between us and Siemens.
It's 192.
It's okay. 192. Oh, yeah. You can you hit it from here? Yeah. You cannot hit it from here, right?
Yeah, I don't think you can.
Anyhow, so that one, well, I cannot see it from this computer. That happens to be the ERPC. That is the link that Ed sent on the invite. That ERPC, you could plug it into an S7300 rack, and at some point, if that's not ready yet, it will have the Mindsphere plugin as well. So any S7300 where you could put this CP is now Mindsphere ready. So there's no need for a gateway. So unfortunately, on Austin's laptop, I cannot see it. It has to be done through my network, which is a local network. But so those are two kinds of Siemens devices that we have. It's the 2040 and of course the laptop, but it could run on a microbox. It could be Windows, it could be Linux, it could be the big mainframes that a lot of the automakers use, like AIX. So hope that answers your question.
Yep, yeah, that is. And but the other question was whether it was actually taking in data for a client somewhere, and whether you could share that if it was being used.
I don't have the Mindsphere. You mean on the 2040?
Right.
No, I don't have the Mindsphere plugin ready for it yet.
See. Okay.
But once it's ready, all that you saw us do here, you could actually export it and import it into the 2040. Everything that I did there, you could say right-click export, and then import it on the 2040. It's just a bunch of XML. It acts like a virtual machine. So it will be running the same thing. The only difference is, in this case, it's not connected into a network, but like a mobile network, like AT&T or Verizon.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from our participants?
Ed, I got one quick question. Would the
Sure.
would the desktop or the workbench functionality always exist as a separate application, or would any of this ever get integrated into the Mindsphere Launchpad?
Great question. Great question. There are discussions of how to do. There are a lot of discussion on what goes where. We have a device management service that today you could launch it from that service, but we're open to see where it makes sense to deploy some of this software. But in theory, it could.
It could.
You could yeah.
And then, like you said, like today, you did the mapping, based on what you'd created previously in Mindsphere, but you could also in the workbench implement some additional functionality that would allow you to create the aspects and the assets that you did prior. You could maybe do that also through the workbench UI.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, that's what we're looking at doing next. Sean is working with Telit so that you don't have to do it on Mindsphere itself, so that the asset aspect type hierarchy or data model that you build within this interface that David is showing you will automatically coincide with what's needed in the Mindsphere side for the data model. So you do it only one time.
Now today, I didn't show you, but today we have implemented three things, and I'll kind of real quickly go over them. We could, of course, send a file. That's simple. We could do the time series, and something that we didn't show you is the vectorization of data, but maybe, yeah, that's kind of like if you have vector data, you could then supply like a count, and then we could send vectors of data, like huge amounts of data. But what we are trying to understand more is what else do we need to provide. For example, do we want to provide to fire an event? If there is a condition on the edge that is an alarm, do we want to then raise the alarm from here just directly, which we can? And there is also notifications. I mean, it's just we need kind of to cooperate and see what is the richest set of functions we need to put in here to make it ideal. So events more than likely will come. Notifications more than likely will come. It will be just another entry on the category Mindsphere that you could then leverage to do something for a customer.
Other questions before we start talking about the go-to-market with Telit? So hopefully, yeah, David and Austin, thank you so much. But please stay on the line because what I'm going to share with you all is our strategy from a partner standpoint, together with sales. In terms of going to market with Telit, of course, you can see the ease of connectivity and the variety of, the rich set of protocols that they support. One anecdotal kind of a story is that David and I went to Siemens in Charlotte, for example, months back, and gave Troy Macera, our colleague over there, who was having a little bit of difficulty connecting to Fano controllers. And David showed him, and in 10 minutes he was up and running and and happy and can connect and auto discover and download all that good stuff. So, pretty quickly, we've been showing that the platform works, right? In terms of go-to-market, you're of course, everyone is, of course, we're happy to have Telit support all that we can within from a project and pursuit standpoint. David and his team, with Austin, have been extremely helpful with that. Our thinking, another session we will provide a bunch of use cases that Telit has. But the point is that, as you can imagine, this provides the connectivity layer in an easy to configure standpoint. And much of the value, some customers will find a lot of value in this already, but much of the value will of course be in creating the applications that would provide insights, etc., on the data collected. And Telit will definitely build some of the applications that they have expertise on, especially in the electronics space and semiconductor space. The idea, the extension of this is that we would create alliances between Telit and our partners, the other partners that we have in the ecosystem, to quote, productize the use case. So I'll give you an example of one thing we're doing with Patty Engineering is one of the other partners we have. Patty and Telit are working on a few use cases in the automotive industry. And the idea is, once that use case with the application from Patty are developed and working, we would make that as a template and quote, productize it so that we can scale and
that's what I said.
yeah, we can scale and go to market in a big way in auto and related industries. does that make sense in terms of a strategy? You think about how we can scale. We can do the projects, right? But the beauty of this is that if you package it, then the idea is to scale from there. So we're pairing Telit with other partners and even internally with Siemens BUs, so that they can, each entity would essentially bundle the Telit capabilities and functionality into, with Mindsphere into, with the application, and offer that to the market in, at a certain attractive, whatever the numbers are, but productize it so that it's scalable. So that's where we're going with this. Any questions on that? The other thing I want to mention is that because this is all done in software, right? So we don't have, we've already been able to, Telit has been able to help our colleagues in one particular project being done in Texas, because in that situation we have right now we have a limitation of the number of tags that can be ingested via our hardware gateways. And in Telit's case, their system doesn't care, whether it's 200 or 300 or 2,000 tags, it'll take it. Is that a correct way of characterizing that, David?
Yes.
So
yeah, it's a software asset. Where deviceWISE is installed today, for example, in a lot of discrete manufacturing, it becomes a likely source of data for Mindsphere. Like some of our friends in Detroit, Michigan, they want to tap to some data at the car makers. So once they upgrade and they install this module, now you have visibility to all their equipment data, and then it could be ingested into Mindsphere with just a few clicks, as you saw.
And also the good news for us is because of our account alignment with Telit. Telit is very strong in automotive, and Chad Liberto and Reinhold Niesing both know this, and in fact, they have partnered with Telit in a few engagements with. Is that a Audi or? Is that our FCA? Yeah.
No, FCA.
FCA. Yeah. And Telit, by the way, but Telit is also at Audi, so. So we're at time. Again, thank you very much, and thank you, David and Austin. Great job. There's going to be a YouTube video. There is one right now that's in sort of draft form, that not commercial, not commercial yet. But there will be one YouTube video that Telit is creating for us that will be distributed to everyone. It should be ready before the Automation Summit, right, David?
Yes. Actually, we're going to probably do a retake on the one that we just saw live with you guys, because it has more equipment. And then we'll put it through the right media people to fix it up nice, and then we'll release that one. But this one is okay as a starter, the one that you mentioned.
And I'll send that to everyone on the call, the YouTube video link. Any last minute comments or thoughts?
Thank you very much. And Ed, I guess we could contact you when it comes to that go-to-market strategy, if we've got someone we think could create a solution with Telit.
Yeah, certainly. And really, just copy me. I don't mind you reaching out to David directly. But copy me so we know what's going on. But yeah, we're happy to help.
Excellent.
Great. Thanks, guys.